Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to another episode of Quite Serious Impressions, where I play the first few hours of a game, then decide whether or not it's worth my time. And today we're going to be talking about God of War, a game developed by Santa Monica Studio and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment, and is the 7th game in the long-running God of War series. Which you wouldn't notice at first. It's hard to believe this game is from the same series when its predecessors were like this. Yet this one is like this.
Tyr's temple is at the center of the lake. It is from there we travel to Alfheim.
After seeing the first gameplay trailer, I was genuinely worried. Throughout the entire trailer, the only thought going through my head was, so it's basically The Last of Us God of War edition. Was I right? If so, is that necessarily a bad thing? Or is it a sign that Sony is running out of ideas? Is making the game more story-heavy gonna work for it or against it? To answer these questions and more, allow me to summarize my first impressions. You play as the iconic God of War himself, Kratos. After he was done with his god-killing spree in God of War 3, Kratos moved to Midgard, married a Norse woman named Faye, and had a child with her named Boy. Apparently, Kratos is a firm believer of the phrase, if at first you don't succeed, try again. However, his attempt at starting a new family was only half successful, since the game starts off with his wife's funeral. But hey, at least the kid survived this time. After the funeral, Kratos decides to test his hunting skills. This part was a good way of showing you Kratos' new life and his relationship with his son, without bombarding you with exposition. I think it was done pretty well. In fact, the entire father-son relationship was very well written. I personally love this new Kratos. He barely says anything, yet you can feel his pain over losing his new wife, the regret he holds for not being the father needed, and the burden he feels for keeping his past a secret.
He doesn't know, does he? About your true nature? Or his own?
That is none of your concern.
After the hunting session, they get a visit by a stranger who clearly knows Kratos' past. Kratos manages to fight him off, then decides to take with him on a journey to the highest peak in Midgard and scatter Faye's ashes, upon her request. On their journey, they meet a number of helpful NPCs, including this witch who ends up helping them on multiple occasions, and these two dwarf brothers who upgrade your weapons and armor, sell you items, and even buy items from you. We'll get to that later though. I know the previous God of War games were meant to be mindless fun, with a story that wasn't meant to be taken seriously, but I genuinely enjoyed the story of those games. I loved Santa Monica Studio's spin on Greek mythology, and this game is no exception. This game is such a treat to Norse mythology fans. Just like in previous titles, they took a number of well-known myths, then made them as epic as possible.
What is this?
Serpent.
This time around though, the story was a much bigger focus than it was before, and from what I've played, it's a very good story. The characters are interesting, the plot is captivating, the dialogue is well written, and overall everything about the story is great, which is fortunate seeing how story heavy this game is. Imagine having a story heavy game with a bland story. How awful would that have been? I especially like the conversations they have while traveling by boat. These boat conversations are very well done and can be really funny at times, especially when Kratos starts telling stories.
There was one that concerned a hare and a tortoise.
Like the witch's house?
Unlikely.
So what happens?
They wager on a race between them. The hare is too confident of victory and foolish, while the tortoise is steady and disciplined. The tortoise wins.
You haven't told a lot of stories, have you?
The best thing about them is that when you get out of a boat, they actually put the conversation on hold, then get back to it when they're back on the boat.
It's sad the elves can't work things out. Alfheim's such a beautiful place, but war makes it ugly.
Enough.
Look, they have sand bowls in Alfheim too. Alfheim's such a beautiful place, but war makes it ugly.
You see with the eyes of a child. In war, a soldier sees beauty only in the blood of his enemy.
Santa Monica Studio even went one step further by adding these Jotna shrines and lore markers that provide a few tidbits of lore. They're not necessary to understand the game's plot, but I found them to be a neat addition. The only complaint I have is how dependent this game is on previous God of War games. Seeing how the game is so different in every way, I just found it a bit weird that they expect you to have played at least God of War 1, 2, and 3 to be able to understand this game's plot. That's not really a bad thing, but I can see how people who love the previous ones would have issues with this one, or vice versa. Perhaps flashbacks could have solved this. Then again, they would have also ruined one of the best things about this game, which I'll get to in a bit. The game looks beautiful. Bear in mind, I'm playing it on a normal PS4 and a crappy monitor, yet it's still gorgeous. And apparently, if you play it on a PS4 Pro, you can choose whether you prefer resolution or frames per second. With console restrictions, I wish more games would do that. Along with the change in theme, the game is also very aesthetically different from its predecessors. In previous titles, red is usually the dominant color, while in this one it's blue. It just works really well with the overall theme change. Even Kratos' new weapon contributes to the change in theme. Instead of the flaming blades of chaos, Kratos now uses a new frost-powered Leviathan axe. I also love Kratos' new look in general. Much like Geralt of Rivia, Kratos proved how awesome beards are. From the lighting, to the character and enemy designs, to the animation, everything about the game's visuals is pleasing. Especially the direction. But before we get into that, let me tell you about Psychotic masking and Fixation. Have you ever seen the movie Oldboy? No, not the awful American remake, I'm talking about the 2003 Korean masterpiece. If you have, you'll probably remember the brilliantly shot hallway fight scene. Ever wondered why that scene is so pleasing to the eye? Us humans have evolved with a feature called psychotic masking. A saccade is basically a fast eye motion that occurs when we snap from looking at point A to looking at point B. Since that motion is optimized for speed, there will be inevitable motion blur. And because evolution is amazing, our brain gained the ability to actually cut off all those unnecessary blurry images. That is what psychotic masking is. Fixation, on the other hand, is our ability to maintain a visual gaze on a single target, even when it moves. It is for that reason that scenes such as the hallway fight in Oldboy or the car scene in Children of Men are a lot more pleasing to watch. It complements our evolutionary abilities. But when we see a scene like this, we get irritated because it goes against our nature. Of course, one-shot scenes are difficult to make in movies. A single mistake could ruin the entire shot. And this is why I think God of War is such an amazing game. The entire game, from start to finish, is one shot. No camera cuts whatsoever. Santa Monica Studio understood that God of War is a game. It does not need to succumb to movie restrictions. They understood that they could make the entire game in one shot because it would make the game more immersive and they wouldn't need to worry about shot-ruining mistakes. I feel like most developers nowadays feel the need to make games more movie-like. How many times have you seen lens flares in a game, or chromatic aberration? These two examples are camera flaws. Why have them in a game when there's no camera to begin with? They don't add to the game. They don't make it prettier. They just look weird and break my immersion. I'm so happy that Santa Monica Studio realized that we don't need movie-like games. We need games. By the way, I'd like to thank my super nerdy friend Singular for helping me write this part. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have known about psychotic masking and fixation, and this part would have been more like, "Game look pretty, me not know why." I'd also like to mention how brilliant the music is in this game. It adds to the atmosphere and makes you feel the contrast between Kratos' Greek origins and the Norse realm he lives in at the moment.
Oh, there do they call to me. Oh, there do they call to me. Oh, there do they call to me. Oh, there do they call to me.
It's not surprising, seeing how it was composed by Bear McCreary, the genius behind the music of shows such as Battlestar Galactica, Black Sails, The Walking Dead, and Da Vinci's Demons. As I mentioned before, this game is very different from its predecessors, and that change is most prevalent in the gameplay. In fact, if it wasn't for the story being connected, there would be next to no similarity between this game and the previous God of War games. Unlike the hack and slash formula we're used to, we now get a slower paced, more atmospheric game. It definitely has its fair share of action sequences, but the puzzles, the boat sections, and the RPG elements help make the action sections all the more interesting. The combat is extremely satisfying. Unlike the combat in previous titles, which was simple and focused around crowd control, the combat in this game is more complex and skill based. You can't just square triangle your way through this one. You can either fight with an axe or barehanded. You've got basic light attacks and heavy attacks. You can also throw your axe at enemies with the chance to freeze them, then retrieve it, which also inflicts damage on its way to you. When your rage meter is full, you can unleash Kratos' Spartan Rage and wreak havoc on your enemies, regaining health with every successful hit. You can guard most attacks and evade attacks that can't be guarded. Most enemies can be parried, which stuns them for a bit, giving you a chance for some free hits. Attacking enemies fills up their stun meter. Once full, you can perform an awesome finishing move. This becomes very helpful later on when you start facing tougher enemies. Although all attacks fill up the meter, it fills up a lot faster when attacking barehanded or with arrows. Speaking of which,
Boy.
is awesome. Not only does he attack enemies on his own, but when you press square, he shoots arrows at enemies you're facing or points you're aiming at. You can unlock more
Boy.
skills, such as holding enemies for you while you bash them or trip them when they're guarding. He doesn't get in your way, never lags behind, and yet he isn't invincible during fights. When hit, he won't be able to attack anyone till he recovers. At least he won't die though. Oh, did I mention the skill tree? Yeah, you can unlock skills from the skill tree that enhance your barehanded combat, weapon combat, and raged combat. You can unlock skills such as this powerful downwards attack that's so satisfying to pull off. You'll find runes that allow you to perform powerful attacks, enchantments that provide passive power-ups, and talismans that give you boosts during combat. You can also get these things crafted at the dwarven blacksmiths I mentioned earlier. They can also craft new armor, enhance the armor you're wearing, and level up your axe and his bow. Here's another RPG element I appreciated in this game. See that number next to the enemy's health bar? That's their level. The higher the enemy's level, the harder they are to beat. I love this because it genuinely adds an extra level of challenge to help test your combat skills. The boss fights are where the combat shines the most, since these fights are usually epic one-on-one battles. Although few and far between, I adored these boss fights. Challenging, fun, exciting, and quite frankly, very cool. I even encountered an optional boss, which I'm sure isn't the only one in the game, but I won't spoil it because honestly it was my favorite boss fight. It's like no matter how much I talk about the combat, there's always something else to mention. I can't explain how brilliant this combat system is. It's so satisfying and every move you make has a weight to it. Oh, and in case you were wondering, yes. There are giant enemies you can ride to attack smaller ones. There are a lot of puzzles in this game. While most of them are pretty straightforward, some of them require a lot of critical thinking. I love how the throwing mechanic is not just for combat, but can also be used to solve many of these puzzles. And the game is not linear at all. There are so many branching paths, secrets, and hidden areas to explore. There are also plenty of chests and doors you can't open till you get the right item for them, which means you can revisit any area you've already explored. There are also these Nornir chests locked with 3 runic seals. Once broken, the chest will be unlocked and you can find either an Idun apple, which is used to increase your maximum health, or a horn of blood mead, which is used to increase your maximum rage. The game also has these milestones called labors that reward you with XP, and side quests called favors that give you valuable prizes once completed. You can track these favors in your journal or on your map, and by the way, did I mention there is a map? I just love this game so much. One of the reasons this impressions video took me so long to make is because every time I think I've seen everything there is to be seen about this game, it throws something new at me. I really don't want to say this, but I feel like it's the best way to explain this game's awesomeness. Imagine taking the God of War series, the Wind Waker, The Last of Us, and Dark Souls, then blending them all together. You'd get this game. This game is without a doubt my favorite game of this generation, and possibly of all time. I had my doubts when seeing the initial announcement at E3, and I'm so happy to say that none of my worries turned out to be real. Cory Barlog, the director behind God of War 2, is also the director behind this one. No wonder it turned out so amazing. We need more games like this. We need more games that offer amazing single-player experiences. Games that offer an engaging story along with fun and interesting gameplay. You have to get this game. Whether you're a fan of the series or not, you will surely find something to love in this game. God of War is available for $59.99 on PS4 and... oh. Right.